ask me anything about politics. My name is Jarrett, and I'm here to answer all of your questions about politics, be they simple or complicated. I know that politics can be really intimidating when you're first trying to learn about it. I know it can feel like trying to learn a new language. So, this is the show where you can ask all of your questions about politics and nobody's going to judge you or roast you or try to debate you. I don't believe in debates. I don't believe that they are productive. So, you're not going to see any of that kind of arguing or fighting or bullying or harassment happening here on this live stream. On this live stream, it is just good faith answers to all of your good faith questions about politics. So throw your questions in the chat and we will get to answering them. Any questions are fine so long as they're asked in good faith. It can be simple or complicated. It can be a left-wing question or a right-wing question. There's no such thing as a dumb question. I might not be able to answer every question, but I will never make anything up and pretend like I know something that I don't. So throw out your questions in the chat and we will get to answering them. Everybody is welcome here, whether you are a Republican, a Democrat, some in the middle, or some on the outskirts. What's up, JP? Great to see you again. This is not a show where I fight people. That Romanian guy says, no way, I was first to LOL. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not really tracking who comes to the live stream first. I only see who comes last. What's up, John Abbott? Good to see you again. Happy Friday to you as well. To everybody else, welcome. My name is Jared, and I'm here to answer all your questions about politics, be they simple or complicated, be they left-wing or right-wing. There is no such thing as a dumb question, and everybody is welcome here, whether you are a Republican, a Democrat, some in the middle, some on the outskirts. I don't care how you voted in the past. I just want to talk to you about how you're planning on voting in the future. And if there are any questions that you have about what our country or our government is up to, this is the show where you can ask those questions and we can all start sharing a reality together once again. Everybody again is welcome here. You're not going to get yelled at or debated or made fun of for having different political opinions than me. J.R. Beck says, where do you get your information? I read a lot. I read a lot about politics. I read from many different sources. The only thing I really avoid is right-wing media because of all the studies that have shown that right-wing media is only like 20% accurate. So it feels like that's probably not, a good source. But I read ground news. I read the Reddit news feed. I listen to political podcasts. I've read a bunch of nonfiction books about politics. That Romanian guy says, what books would you recommend for educating myself more on politics? Are you on my Discord channel, that Romanian guy? Because I have a whole thread there that is just recommendations for books and podcasts. I'll name a couple off the top of my head, but that's probably the easiest way, so you don't have to like write them down or anything like that. J.R. Beck says, and you believe they're accurate? ? Yeah, I have no reason to believe that the stuff that I'm not seeing is accurate, and because I use multiple different sources, I counter any potential bias that might exist in specific outlets. Doma says, all media is inaccurate because everyone has a leaning to support one side and slander the other. That is inaccurate, Doma. It is not every news organization that has a mandate to support one side and slander the other. Most news organizations, their mandate is just to report the news. That's where right-wing media is different, though. Right-wing media is leaning to the right and slandering the left, and people say that like CNN has a bias against the Republican Party. I find that to be largely inaccurate. I mean, especially now that Larry Ellison is going to own CNN, but we're talking about the CNN of the past. But all the mainstream news outlets that people claim have a bias against the right wing, the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, the BBC, etc., their mandate is not to take down Republicans and support Democrats. Their mandate is to report the news. Brayton says, dude just said right wing is right wing bias, left wing isn't. That's not what I said. TNT says, USPS getting a loan from Congress. Thoughts? Yeah, I feel like the regulations that we put on the post office have been sort of like encouraging them to fail. So I think that this is probably a good fix for those regulations. Sergey says, dude, what is your political alignment? I'm a progressive Democrat. J.R. Beck says, Okay, how about being open to real information that you can only get by being on scene? I mean, that's obviously good, but being on the scene doesn't guarantee that you're getting accurate information. Also, being on scene is prohibitively difficult for a lot of people. Some people can't afford to do that. Can't afford it time wise, energy wise, or financially. Bert's, good to see you again, says, what do you think of the additional 200 billion to fund the Iran war? Is it the same as the alleged fraud? I'm not really sure what you mean by the alleged fraud, but yeah, asking for an additional $200 billion when we are already spending way too much on this war that is not accomplishing any specific or productive goals for America or the globe. It is reckless, dangerous, expensive, a waste of time, energy, money, and lives. Yeah, no human being should be voting for this. No, Republican, Democrat, you are a fucking psychopath if you vote to give Pete Hegseth's Pentagon, Donald Trump's Pentagon, 200 billion more dollars to do this war when they have cut funding for cancer research, they have cut funding for other medical research, they have cut funding for your healthcare costs. So your healthcare costs are going up. Your gas is getting more expensive. They're building fucking golden ballrooms, redecorating the White House, redecorating the fucking Kennedy Center, and they have the fucking gall to cut programs that we need so that they can do more renovations and then also kill more brown people in the Middle East. Like, are you fucking kidding me, man? Oy, 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 oy. J.R. Beck says, you're getting inaccurate news. I do not believe that I am, J.R. Beck. Ms. going to be all right. Good to see you again. Blaze says, I asked about communism the other day. All right, well, welcome back. John Abbott says, did you see a second one of the sons from the Night King Kids and Counting family got arrested for child SA? I did not see that. I don't really truck with reality TV. Alrighty. J.R. Beck says, shall we compare sources? I mean, what do you think that I'm saying is inaccurate, JR? Akshay says, why does the GOP call it a Democrat shutdown when Republicans are in the majority? Because the GOP is not in the business of actually governing. The GOP is in the business of slandering Democrats. Sergei Tabaritsky says, the rich support right media because it benefits them. That is accurate. GSDM says, bro, Chuck Norris passed away yesterday. Yeah, he was old. He was kind of wackadoo towards the end of things. J.R. Beck says, I spent 70% of 2024 in the Middle East and West Europe. That's my source. Okay, JR. Oh my God, what a cool guy you are. Stranger from the internet claiming to have spent 70% of 2024 in the Middle East and West Europe. Yeah, that does not make you a more accurate purveyor of information than any other human being, my guy. Like, you might, first of all, you might be making that up. Second of all, just because you were there does not mean that you were getting accurate information, yeah, LOL typical. Yeah, you're not here in good faith, man. You're out of here. Okay, Isaac says, thoughts on kidnapping Maduro? It was reckless, irresponsible, a violation of Venezuela's sovereignty. It was escalatory. The only thing it accomplished was it made a whole bunch of money for Chevron. That was basically it. Akshay says, thoughts on Don Lemon? I never had a problem with Don Lemon. I only heard that he was kind of a piece of shit after he got fired. But yeah, I don't know. He could just be hiding it way better now than he was before. Striker Kuntz says, do you support ICE? No, I do not. ICE is behaving recklessly and barbarically. They are breaking the law. They are illegally kidnapping people and sexually assaulting people and murdering people. They are not accomplishing the goal that has been set forth for them. They are not deporting the worst of the worst. They are just rounding up people based on how they look and then torturing them, detaining them illegally, sexually assaulting them, or killing them. All right. Strength. I actually know that Chinese character. The Chinese character for Strength asked, what do you think about Trump visiting Paradise Palms Island? I mean, it makes sense. The thing about the Epstein files is there's a lot of information in there and there's a lot of misinformation in there. The question is not what do you know? The question is what can you prove from Training Day? You guys remember. And so it is true that a lot of the information in there tracks with what I believe. Like, it makes sense that Donald Trump would do shit like that. It makes sense that Jeffrey Epstein might do shit like that. But as far as I know, there has not been indictable information in there. It just looks bad, right? Now, if you ask Thomas Massey and Ro Khanna, they will tell you that there are at least like 6 people in there that they could indict just based on the information that we've seen, and there's more information coming. So yeah, do I think it is sketchy as hell that Trump went to Epstein Island? Yeah, 100%. But it has not been proven yet that he did anything particular while he was there. Isaac says, how do you stay informed? I read the news. I read news aggregators like Reddit and Ground News, and I listen to a lot of podcasts and read a lot of nonfiction about politics. Bert says, what do you think of Crockett and Tallarico of Texas? I like them both. Tallarico won the primary. I think he's great, and I believe that he has a really good chance of flipping that seat. Sorry. Skyball says, thanks to the Democrats for getting in the situation in the first place. It takes a real man to get us out. That's not really accurate, Skyball. Would you like to ask a question, or are you just here to spread misinformation? Let me know. Some dude says, do you think it's possible for Democrats to take Texas? Yes. Sean says, who's the finest president we ever had? Finest, like, sexy? Probably Obama. I don't remember what everybody else looked like. Sergei Taboritsky says, since attempts at communism always are worse than before. Communism kind of is impossible, so trying to get it is knowingly fighting for worse. I disagree with that. We have never seen a full-on communist state. We've only seen dictatorships calling themselves communist states. We already see communism working on the small scale in things like employee-owned companies. So yeah, if you're saying like, do I think that that it would work if the entire country was full-on 100% communist? I'm not trying to do that. What I am trying to say is workers need more power. Workers deserve more revenue from the product of their labor. All right, Eliminator Floyd, it's good to see you again. Some dude says, who do you think is most likely to continue Trump's legacy? Probably one of the stupid kids, I think, probably. Darian says, thoughts on Iran. This war that Trump is perpetuating is illegal. It is expensive in both money and lives. There are people who are dead today, both Americans and Iranians, that did not need to be, because this war is accomplishing jack fucking shit. They have not made the case. Their justifications for it keep changing. What their definition of victory is keeps changing. $1 billion a day when people are going hungry and can't afford healthcare and can't afford rent. Like for what? There was an entire generation of Iranians that had no reason to hate Americans, but now we've just created an entirely new, more radical generation of Iranians. Iraq and Afghanistan were fucking catastrophes, and those were way better planned and explained than this war. And those were smaller countries too. So this is going to be such a massive fucking catastrophe that has negative impacts for everybody for a really long time. It's not even fucking funny. Spicy Girl says, I concur. Trump doesn't know what he's doing. That is accurate. Trey says, BS. Can you tell me a single thing that I said that you think is inaccurate? Isaac said, if you got to choose, who would you pick for president 2028? Well, the first thing I would choose, Isaac, is for Democrats to win the midterms in 26, and for everybody who's watching this to do the work to vote in 26 and to win the midterms in 26. But for 28, I like Chris Murphy for president. PKLB John says, W. Groiper in here. Are you a Groiper, P. Caleb? I don't know what you're saying. Actually says, was the grid out in Cuba because of the U.S.? Yes, I believe that is accurate. Tom DeLuca says, have you thought how we can force a constitutional convention? The only way we can do that is winning elections. But if there's a more specific issue that you want to have a constitutional convention for, then there might be interesting ways of accomplishing that goal without a constitutional convention. For example, the National Popular Vote Interstate Compact would undo the Electoral College without needing a constitutional convention. That, once again, is the National Popular Vote Interstate Compact. Everybody should call their secretaries of state and ask them if our state has signed up for the National Popular Vote Interstate Compact yet. CS asks, why didn't Trump continue to refill the strategic reserves? Which of his kids are the dumbest? I think Ivanka is probably the smartest of the bunch, but they're all kind of, they're all kind of bottom of the barrel. Heathen says, do you think socialism like the Nordic model works better than ours? Yes, 100%, full stop. Akshay says, how to stay non-biased. Get your news from a bunch of different sources. Avoid right-wing media. Laura says, twin, why are you avoiding the real questions? What real questions? Juice did it. Says, how about no Zionists in office? It depends on how you define Zionism. If Zionism means that the people who are currently living in Israel get to stay there, then Zionists are fine. If Zionism means that Israel gets to take over the entire Middle East, then yeah, I think we should vote all those people out of office. Adam says, do you think 6, 7, or 41 will win out? Did you hit the jackpot? I don't know what that means. Some dude says, who do you think Trump delegated their Iran stuff to? Lindsey Graham, Marco Rubio, Netanyahu, etc. B. Caleb says, basic contradiction. Don't know what that means. Alora says, just tell us who you think would secretly join an a cappella group. What, in government? I've got no fucking idea what you guys are talking about. Some of these questions seem kind of trolly to me. Ooh, Crawford Corey says, how long will the Strait of Hormuz be closed? I have no fucking idea. T-Bone says, what's your basic take on Fetterman as a Democrat? He fucking sucks. He's a turncoat. He's a traitor. He needs to get primaried out of office. No Saint says, yes, vote Democrat in the midterms, destroy the Republicans. Total Groiper victory. Again, No Saints. I don't know what you're talking about. No Saint says, do you consider yourself a Groiper? No, I do not. I'm a progressive Democrat. Alora says, I'm so serious, twin. I could see J.D. Vance doing a cappella. I'm not answering silly questions about a cappella. Let's see here. Adam says, do you think water is dry? No, I don't. P. Caleb says, get news from all sources but avoid right wing. Yes, Caleb, because the data has shown that right wing media is the least accurate kind of media that you can absorb. So why do you need to have something that is only 20% accurate included in your media diet? I don't think that it is. I do not think that that is a productive use of your time. Ninjas in Paris says, does our votes even truly matter if the Electoral College exists? Yes, 100%. Every vote counts. Now, because of things like the Electoral College, some votes count more than others. And obviously that is something that we should change. But everybody's vote counts. And we have really terrible voter participation in America. So if not voting worked to create the kind of change that you want, it would have worked already. So maybe we should all try voting and see if that helps instead. Like Caleb says, the right has power right now. That is accurate. CS says, why is Election Day not a national holiday? Because certain people in power do not want people voting. They just want to continue getting reelected with 50% of the population voting and sometimes less. All right, Ecuadorian, good to see you again. John Abbott says Vance doesn't have half the riz he'd need for an a cappella group. That's a pretty massive indictment, I think. Some dude says, what do you think should be done with the prediction markets gambling? I think they need to be regulated out of existence. Rudy Blaylock says, you can't vote your way out of capitalism. Yes, you can. Isaac says, how long do you think someone should spend researching politics on a daily basis? I don't know. I think that's a personal choice that everybody needs to make with however much time they have available to them. B. Walt says, do you think Trump made some sort of coup to remain as POTUS? I mean, yeah, before January 6th, he was involved in a coup attempt. But right now, he is working behind the scenes to make sure that him and other Republicans stay in power. Dorku says, opinion on socialism. It depends on how you define it. I like things like socialized medicine and free public college and government housing. I think that the government should be doing things with their tax dollars to help everybody. That's kind of how I define socialism. It's the Nordic model. It is raising taxes for the rich and then using that money to help everybody else. User 56 says, what do you think about Jeffrey Epstein files? I am waiting for there to be some actionable items in there. Like, according to Ro Khanna, there are definitely people that can be indicted in those files. I don't know if we've seen that information yet. Excuse me. But it is clear that the Republican Party and the Trump administration are currently involved in a cover-up of that information to protect the president and his buddies. Okay, Segura says, opinion on the Cesar Chavez scandal. So it's interesting. I don't know if they are accurate. I have not looked into it. I am not like a Cesar Chavez stan. Like, I'm not going to die on the hill of protecting Cesar Chavez's, reputation. He did do some great things as far as like supporting the working class and unions and whatnot. But he definitely, even without knowing about the sexual scandals, we know that this is an extremely flawed individual. I do think that it is interesting that this has come out now when so much information is coming out about sexual misconduct and sexual assault from the billionaire class, the Epstein class, Trump and his buddies, etc. And so it almost seems targeted, like we got to find a left-wing person who did shitty things also, you know? I'm not saying that it's not true. I'm just saying it's a little sus that it came out now. All right, KG13 says, what do you think about euthanizing the homeless? I'm against it. Isaac says, do you think MAGA is focused on negative partisanship? Yeah, I think the billionaire class is mostly behind it. It helps them for us to be fighting amongst themselves. I think that some MAGA people are in on that joke and are in on that bit. Some of them just really like, quote unquote, owning the libs. So they do this for fun, for free. They're working for the billionaire class for free, basically. All right, Kimberlina says, Hexa said it costs money to kill bad guys. Where's the GoFundMe? He's just so fucking stupid, you know, Kimberlina. He's just such a fucking idiot. What are we gonna do, you know? Ecuadorian says, how's your Friday going? Pretty good. Trump is asking Congress to help pay for his war. What a fucking loser. Yeah, completely agree with that. Cam says, I heard when you vote for state law, you only get a little paragraph to read. Is that true? There is more material available, but they do give you like a little synopsis when you vote specifically. Like sometimes, depending on what state you're in, they'll give you a little paragraph about it on the day that you vote. Sometimes they will mail you like a little explainer video, not a little explainer video, but like a little explainer pamphlet. So I just got reported for harassment and bullying. I suspect it's because I said that Pete Hegseth was an idiot. If you are the person that reported me, please let me know so that I can not do harassment and bullying in the future. But because I got reported and we're only 20 minutes in, I'm going to restart the TikTok stream. So if you're watching on TikTok, please come right back and we will continue the stream. All right, come right back, TikTok. I will be right back. To everybody else watching on YouTube and Twitch and Substack, now is a good time to get your questions in because we're going to be waiting for our TikTok audience to come on back. Alrighty, let's see here. Yeah, you guys are getting into the whole, 19 kids and counting. Shit, that's pretty enjoyable. To everybody else, welcome. This is Ask Me Anything About Politics. My name is Jarrett, and I'm here to answer all of your questions about politics, be they simple or complicated, be they left-wing or right-wing. I am not the kind of person who makes fun of people or judges people based on how they vote or how they identify politically. So you don't have to worry about getting roasted or called a fascist or called a cuck here. It is just good faith answers to all of your good faith questions. I know politics can be really intimidating when you're first trying to learn about it. I know it can feel like trying to learn a new language. So this is the show where you can ask all of your questions about politics without getting roasted or judged or anything. Kimberlina says, I'm sorry, that was my fault. What did you do, Kimberlina? D says, do you think we would have had this war regardless of Trump or Kamala? No, Kamala Harris would not have started this war with Iran, full stop. Kamala Harris, no Democratic president, no fucking Republican president would have started this war with Iran, unless it was like Marco Rubio or Lindsey Graham. Like all the people in the Trump administration who are currently fucking have war boners about this stupid fucking war, they're the ones that you needed to worry about. But yeah, no normal smart person would have done this. Righty, Domus's opinion on third positionism. Is third positionism the same as like third way centrism, or is that about like voting for independent parties, Doma? I'm not sure what you mean by that exactly. Isaac says, what's the best way to build yourself politically in college? I guess I would just say, maybe run for student government. Maybe see if there is a college political group, like there's I know that there are like, college Republicans and college Democratic clubs to get together and talk about shit, but you could also volunteer for campaigns or, stuff like that. Cam says, what would you do about the homeless issue if you were in Congress or president? It's a really interesting question, Cam. So there are a couple of things that we know. We know that it is less expensive to just give homeless people homes than to fund soup kitchens and shelters and shit like that. And then just have them, soak up a whole bunch of money every time they have to go to the emergency room because of exposure. The issue there is that for some reason, people in America they get real butthurt when they see somebody getting something for free, especially poor people. And so it would be difficult to sell that to the American people, but it would save them money. It would save everybody money to just give homeless people houses. What's up, V? Good to see you again. Julia says, how much hope do you have given the Iran war? I feel discouraged. Julia, I completely understand feeling discouraged. It is normal to feel discouraged. In fact, I would argue that that is part of the Trump and Stephen Miller strategy, is to make people like you and me feel discouraged. So I am not going to give them that gift. I am not going to give them the gift of my pessimism. We can be hopeful about the future, but we also need to do the work to save the future, because it is up to us. The Democratic Party right now does not have the power or the resources to fight the Trump administration. It is up to us. We have to strike and boycott and protest. We have to put political pressure on our elected representatives and business leaders and billionaires. We have to talk to people in real life. We have to convince people and recruit people and organize and vote. We have to do the work. That is how we get out of this. Ren says, is political violence justified? No, I don't think that any violence is justified. Isaac says, why do you think Republicans are so focused on Israel? There's a bunch of different motivations for a Republican politician being focused on Israel. A lot of them are heavily invested with the military-industrial complex, so they could just be padding their pocketbook. Some of them are religious extremists who believe that we need to have nuclear war in the Middle East to bring about the second coming of Jesus Christ so that they can get raptured up to heaven. Some of them are pawns of the fossil fuel industry, and they really want to steal all the oil that gets out of there. Some of them are just straight up racist, and they love murdering brown people. You know, there's a bunch of different reasons why Republican politicians are hype about about Israel and the Iran war. All right, CamCan says, do you think any good would come out of a third political party instead of just the big two? Potentially, but without ranked choice voting, a third party can only be a spoiler candidate. Ren Z says, can the two-party system really be broken? Yes, but you have to vote for Democrats in order for that to happen, because Democrats will pass ranked choice voting and Republicans won't. Monty says, the problem that the left has is that Trump has your mind controlled. No, he doesn't. Jago Vargas says, will Israel try to expand their borders from the Nile to the Euphrates? I mean, with the current Netanyahu administration, I think that is probably a likely policy priority of theirs. I do not believe that the greater population of Israel wants that kind of heat. Isaac says, thoughts on Amy Klobuchar and her run for governor of Minnesota? I'm glad that she's running for governor as opposed to president. I think that she's a smart pick for who's going to take over for Tim Walz. I don't know too much about Amy Klobuchar, but I have faith that she can win that election and be a good governor. All righty, scrolling up. Monty says, only in this country we are worried about the poor or homeless. No, everybody. People are worried about the homeless and the poor in every country, Monty. What a weird thing to say. Veed says, do you see this war going through the summer and bleeding into the midterms? I have no fucking idea. Even if America stopped this war today, we have no idea what Iran is going to be doing and when they're going to stop doing what they are doing. All right, scrolling down the bottom of the TikTok comments. Ahi Opneb says, do you think Russia will ally with Europe? No, Russia is going to try to annex Europe. Julia says, what happens realistically if Trump gets impeached or passes away naturally? It depends when that happens and who is in charge of Congress when that happens. So if Trump dies while he is president, then J.D. Vance becomes president. If Trump gets impeached and removed from office, it is likely that J.D. Vance will also get impeached and removed from office, in which case the Speaker of the House becomes president. And if Trump is getting impeached, it is likely that Democrats would be in charge of the House and the Senate, in which case whoever Democrat is in charge of the House would then become president. If it happened today, that would be what's his name? Not Kevin McCarthy. What the fuck's the dude's name? Mike Johnson. That is currently the House Speaker. Cuz says, do you think Norway is better than the U.S.? I don't think that any country is better than any other country, but I do think that the government of Norway is better than the current government of America. Mike Johnson, thank you. Cuz 808 says, do you think I already did that one. Aopneb says, do you believe Russia wants Greenland? No, I do not believe that Russia wants Greenland. Short says, are the current reports of boots on the ground credible? Yes, they are. In addition to us already having troops on the ground in the surrounding areas that Iran is currently striking, so technically they're in the theater, there are reports, credible reports, that Trump and Hegseth are diverting troops into that area for more ground operations. Because 808 says, why is China developing way faster than the USA? There's a bunch of different reasons for that. The bad reason for that is that they have an authoritarian government, so Xi Jinping is allowed to just tell people to do things and then they have to do them. They also have a lot of prison labor because they imprison so many people, and they have worker camps for the ethnic cleansing of the Uyghurs that is going on there. But then there's also good faith reasons, like the fact that they have invested heavily in green technology, which means that they have there's a lot less overhead for their electricity consumption, which means that they are able to advance certain priorities. They have invested more in STEM than we have here in America, and so they're fucking kicking our ass there on research. It doesn't really seem like they get caught up in the same kind of stupid culture war bullshit that means that all of their resources go to the billionaire class. So yeah, there are definitely issues with the Chinese government, but there's also, some things that they're doing right, like printing out nuclear power plants worth of solar panels every day. Badger75 says China does spend on infrastructure. That is accurate. Kimberlina says they are progressing renewable energy far faster than us as well. That is accurate. Ayo Neb says, do you believe Germany is going to outgrow America in their military power? I think it's unlikely we really have a head start on them. The fact that they feel like they need to start growing their military for domestic protection says everything about how shitty America as a country has become. Nick says, do you support this war? No, it is irresponsible, dangerous, reckless, stupid. Like there are not enough negative words in the dictionary for me to describe this stupid fucking war. I'll only say that Iraq and Iran were catastrophes, and they were way better planned and were much smaller countries. So how do you think this is going to turn out if, the fucking brain trust behind Iraq and Afghanistan wasn't, like we wish that we had the geniuses behind Iraq and Afghanistan behind this war. Ms. Gonna Be Alright Someday says there's been more talk about auto registry for the draft. Do you think they might start a draft? So there has been some conflicting reporting about this. There is regular automatic registry for the draft, and there has been for a very long time. That's not like a new policy. That is not the Trump administration preparing for a draft. Now, that doesn't mean that there's not going to be a draft. It is true that the Trump administration is floating the idea in case that just is something they decide they want to do. But yeah, the potential for a draft is not related to the legislation that just passed about auto registering for the draft. Alrighty, Misty Lane, great to see you again. Straight out of question jail, hear me out. If you are a capitalist, then why can capitalism not compete with socialized companies that work together to collective uplift the community? I think the competition is fine, but like to be in constant competition to survive. For the sake of competition, you should try working together to reach other and uplift the community by voting Democrat. Completely agree with that, Misty Lane. I think part of the goal of capitalism and these, massively profitable corporations has been to eliminate competition, both in the free market and against government programs. So that's why, big business is constantly trying to get politicians elected who will let them become big old monopolies and, defund government programs. The part of the reason why they defund public education in red states is because they want to make private education seem like more of a, make it seem better, But if we funded our public schools enough so that nobody wanted to pay for private education, then private education wouldn't exist anymore. This is squarely a plot of the right-wing billionaire class to get us to be wage slaves. All right, Rocky Rush Rivera says, blah, 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 blah. Nobody's forcing you to be here, Rocky. Would you like to ask a question? Cam says, can I ask respectfully, do you think China is one day going to surpass the USA? I guess it depends on what you mean by surpass. Like, the America currently is in the process of just self goals over and over and over again. It is literally as though every time the ball comes in, we are just straight kicking it back into our own goal. Will that redound to China being dominating us militarily, technologically, economically? I think there's a really good chance that all of those things come true. Now, China is also a massive country and it's an authoritarian country. Are the people in China going to put up with that? Are they going to put up with, the way that the government of China does not respect their rights and privileges? Like, that's an open question. Like, China's not doing everything perfect. Like, people still are struggling there. So yeah, we don't know what's going to happen in the future. But I would say that if we wanted to if you wanted to create an American government that would serve China, the world on the platter, it would be exactly what's going on right now. It would be this Trump administration. Oh, Mel, thank you for posting this to Blue Sky. I really appreciate that. John Abbott says, China uses its prison slaves to work on government projects instead of the U.S. using our prison slaves to work on fast food franchises. That is accurate, John Abbott, and really upsetting, obviously. That is not the kind of world that I want to live in. Oy, 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 oy. Sean Sawyer says, Buddy just looks liberal. Yeah, I'm fucking hot as hell. I look like I fuck because I do. That's why I look like a liberal. Lorenzo V says, our prisoners eat hamburgers every day. I don't know if that's accurate. Ms. is going to be all right someday says, do you think China will invade Taiwan before the Epstein War is over? I think that it is. I think it's very likely that China does this during the Trump administration. Okay, Ace says, thoughts on what is going on with Cuba? During the Obama administration, we normalized relationship with Cuba so that we could help the Cuban citizens and they could potentially help themselves to not be under an authoritarian regime. Trump decided to change that policy, going back to the same policy that hasn't worked since JFK of just cutting off the island and making all the citizens suffer. And now Trump has escalated that by making sure that they don't get any oil, and now they have no energy grid, and they're starving to death and shit like that. So yeah, it's barbaric. It is unproductive because instead of the people getting mad at their government, they get mad at us. So, it doesn't work. It's stupid. It makes people hurt. John B says, love Trump. That's not a question, John B. Ask a question or leave. Connor says, the real left starts at opposition to capitalism. There can be some capitalism, Connor, but I think we have too much of it right now. David says, why has our deficit doubled under Trump? Because the Republican Party cuts taxes for the wealthy and giant corporations. So now these giant corporations are massively profitable. They are, unfathomably profitable. There are individual citizens of this country who are wealthier than any human being has ever been in the history of humanity. And at the same time, we are starving people of government subsidies that help them to survive. And those people now can't pay taxes because they're so poor. So yeah, we are not funding our war and building detention facilities and data centers because the Republican Party refuses to tax the wealthy. Rocky Rush Rivera says, wrong. All right, well, you're not asking questions, Rocky, so you're out of here. Jiu-Jitsu Prince says, America is damned if you do, damned if you don't. I disagree with that. America is only damned if you don't. I know Scoped Abe says, do you think France was involved in the Charlie Kirk assassination? Probably not. Cam says, how do you run for Congress and do you think anyone should be able to run for president? If you really want to learn about that, I would say check out an organization called Run for Something. Ms. is going to be all right says, which would you say was the most progressive president? Honestly, it's a toss-up between FDR and Joe Biden. There's an argument to be made that Joe Biden's administration was one of the most progressive in history, not because of Joe Biden, but because he let his team basically run the government. Regardless, the Biden administration was the most progressive administration we've had since FDR. And how did America reward the most progressive administration we've had since FDR? They voted unanimously for the Republican Party. So just want to let everybody know, why the Democratic Party sort of like gets mixed messages sometimes about whether they should be centrist or or progressive. Jerdnaz Litzenhurston says Obama wasn't progressive to you. He was. He just wasn't as progressive as I wanted him to be. And it makes sense that he wasn't. You know, he was the first black president. He was president in 2008 instead of 2020. Arguably, the world was less progressive in 2008 as opposed to 2020. Yeah, you know. Coco says they voted for the dumbest president ever. That is accurate. Rude says, why are communists almost always British cigarettes nowadays? That is not accurate. Rude E. Ask better questions. Hambone Mike says, isn't Joe Biden the worst president ever? No, Hambone Mike. Not even close. Would you like me to go into more detail? Jay says, host knows nothing. That is not accurate. I know lots of things. Kimberlina says, do you think the next president will be the most progressive? I have no idea. Rocky Cook 86 says, you must not have a family. Want what best for my family? Sleeping Joe. That does not seem like a real thing. Rocky Cook, I do have a family, and I do want the best for them, which is why I encourage people to vote for Democrats. Robbie DK says, how can MAGA not see what's going on, or are they too ashamed to admit they were wrong? I think it's a bunch of different things. I think it's an information bubble. I think some of them are like in the Trump cult. I think that some of them are too ashamed to admit they were wrong. There's a book that I have not read yet called One Day Everyone Will Have Always Been Against This. And I think we're basically seeing that play out in real time. John B says, do you like socialism? It depends on how you define it, John B. I like socialism when it's things like socialized medicine. I like things like free public college and affordable housing subsidized by the government. Now, I don't know. There's never been a full socialist government, so I couldn't tell you how that would work. But I think we maybe just do a little bit more of the things that I said before we start going down there. Mel says, Gavin Newsom or too early? Nobody has declared yet, so we don't know who's running for president. Hambo Mike says, will the next president be Republican? I sure hope not. Cam says, did I ask you if you think defense spending is too high? I forgot. I don't know if you did or not, but I do think that it is too high. And I think that before we add money to the Pentagon, we should force them to pass an audit. They have never. Fred Word the Sloth says, why do you like to pay for lazy people to have things? I don't. That's why I vote for Democrats, because I'm tired of lazy-ass rich people stealing all of our fucking tax dollars and not paying their fair share of taxes. Would you like me to go into more detail? Fred Word the Sloth, I'm happy to. Foyd Destroyer says, thoughts on Trump allying with the new Syrian leader, a person that was from a terror group? So it is true that that is a bad look for Trump, but there's actually a substantive reason behind it. The Syrian revolution came from within the country, and so it is exactly how revolutions are supposed to go. And the dude who used to be part of the terror group has pledged for Syria to not be the kind of restrictive theocracy that his previous terrorist organization would have advocated for. So, we got to keep an eye on things, obviously, and make sure that he is holding to his word. But yeah, and I'm never going to give Trump credit for anything that he doesn't deserve. So, I can't throw shade at that when I think that is like one of the few not psychotic things that he's ever done. Hambone Mike says, next president will definitely be a Republican. What a weird thing to say, Hambone Mike. You're in question jail, Hambone Mike. Ask a question or I'm going to boot you. Somebody whose screen name is Trump just posted I love Vice. Just going to go ahead and block you right now because I do not have any faith that, you are here in good faith. All right. A moth that thinks says, do you support Iran or NATO? I mean, I support NATO and I support the citizens of Iran. I do not support the government of Iran. T-Bone says, why does the Democratic leadership in the House dislike American citizens? Democratic leadership and Democratic politicians do not dislike American citizens. T-Bone, would you like me to go into more detail on that? Happy to. Mel says, taking everything into consideration, do you think the GOP will allow Trump to complete his term? Yes, 100%. Until we make it politically less advantageous for Republican politicians to support Trump, they are never going to abandon him. Yeah, whatever says, please block me so I don't have to look at you ever again. You got it, man. Your wish is my command. Travis says, I may not agree with Trump, but no way would I support this Democratic Party. Why not, Travis? Foyd Destroyer says, that kind of flopped. He banned alcohol and didn't allow anybody to eat outside during Ramadan. That may or may not be true. Foid Destroyer. I have not been keeping up with it. Nicknamer says, how to get fascist out. Nicknamer, the way we do it is we do the work. And if you want to know what the work is, check out my Discord. I got a whole thread about it. Hambone Mike says, what is the rich man's fair share? More. Hambone Mike. The rich man's fair share is more. Right now, they're riding around on fucking private jets and mega yachts and mega mansions, eating lobster and caviar 3 fucking meals a day. They've got more money than they can spend in 10 lifetimes, and there are American citizens who cannot afford to eat, cannot afford housing, cannot afford medical care, cannot afford a college education for their children. They got to work 80 hours a week at 3 jobs. And the number of Americans who are currently suffering in that is going up. There are more people who are suffering in that way than there used to be. So yeah, the answer is more. Hambone Mike. The answer is more. And Hambone Mike says irrelevant answer. That's just kind of mean. Irrelevant, So you're out of here. Alrighty, let's see here. Cam says, I remember 10 years ago, politicians used to say what they wanted to do. Now it's like a fighter press. I don't know if I agree with that. Harold Dean Ho says, who wins in an oiled up torque off? Vance or Newsom? Vance has got the cake. No, Vance does not have the cake. Newsom's got the cake. I would give it to Newsom. Misty Lane says, will the next president be Hakeem Gigachat Jeffries? That is very funny to refer to Hakeem Jeffries as a gigachat. That really got me. And no, I don't think so. I think that it is unlikely that Trump and Vance get removed from office, even if Democrats win the midterms. And it is becoming less and less likely that Hakeem Jeffries and Chuck Schumer retain their positions in leadership. Rocky Cook says, Trump is for my family and grandkids. What about identification for voting? Rocky Cook, I want to make something very clear to you. Trump is not for your family and grandkids. Trump has done nothing to help your family and your grandkids. Unless you're a billionaire or a racist, then Trump has done nothing for your family and grandkids. GC says, let's get the real question out of the way. Who wins March Madness? No idea. Shork says, is Ro Khanna secretly more progressive than AOC? Potentially. I have no idea, though. Electrowave says, who is your preferred candidate for president in 2028? Well, first, I want Democrats to win in 2026. And I think everybody watching should do the work so that Democrats can win the midterms in 2026. Everybody's got to go out there and vote in 2026 in the midterms. Everybody's got to do the work to get other people to vote in the midterms. Let's make this the highest voter participation midterms in American history. That's what I want to see. And I want to see Democrats fucking run the board, man. Win every fucking available seat. After that, my ideal pick for president would be Chris Murphy. Ryan Marshall says, thoughts on Chuck Norris dying? I don't know if Chuck Norris was a good guy or not. He had some really fucking bananas political beliefs late in life, so I'm not too sad about it. But yeah, if he was a good guy, that's sad. If not, then, you and Rush Limbaugh could enjoy the exact same afterlife as far as I'm concerned. Trey Kettle says, what are your thoughts on abortion? I am pro-choice, but even if you are pro-life, you should still vote for Democrats because Democratic policies actually decrease the number of abortions that happen. Republican policies say that they stop abortions, but they don't. They don't even decrease the number of abortions that happen. The only thing that Republican policies actually do is increase accidental pregnancies and maternal and fetal death. It only makes pregnancy more dangerous for women. Even women that don't want to get abortions, pregnancy is more dangerous for them when Republicans enact abortion bans. Alrighty, let's see here. Missy Lane says, also in 2006, Hamas was an organization that Israel has promoted by funding. That is actually widely reported as accurate. Netanyahu was funneling money to Hamas so that he could have a scapegoat, so that he could justify annexing more territory in Palestine and hurting more Palestinians. That is a real fucking thing. And everybody should be fucking pissed off about that. All right, Ryan Marshall says, favorite gas station snack? I'm going to go Pop-Tarts. Kasem63 says, and your little editor keeps whisking away my comments. That's typical leftists. My editors do not whisk away comments, Kasem, but sometimes TikTok will will block certain comments based on the content. And I believe, Kasem, that you're probably writing some offensive shit, and that's why TikTok is doing it. Ryan Marshall says, what is your definition of pro-choice? I'm not fully informed on it. So pro-choice basically says that until the moment of viability, any woman should be able to get an abortion if they want to get an abortion. And viability means the moment that a fetus can survive outside of the womb. It's important to note that the first trimester, which is 3 months, aka 18 weeks, is when 90% of all abortions happen. And that abortions that happen after that, 90% of them happen for medically necessary reasons. So we're not talking about a world where women are in their 3rd trimester and are like, you know what? I know that I've been carrying this baby for a long time and enduring morning sickness and achiness and having to buy new clothing, and also my body's fucking changing in super weird ways and I'm uncomfortable all the time. But I think I'm going to get rid of this baby just for shits and giggles. Like, that's not a thing that happens. Abortion bans, though, are what is keeping women from getting pregnant, from getting abortions that they need medically. And it is instituting 6-week abortion bans in some case, meaning that, you know, some women don't even know they're pregnant until they're given birth. You know, you're telling women they got to get their abortions before 6 weeks before they can even fucking miss a period potentially, you know? Alrighty, let's see here. Just scrolling through some of these comments, making sure I'm not being a jerk. You guys are all doing great over on YouTube and Twitch. I am really enjoying the content over there. Scott Hope says, any discussion yet about how to fill all the oil tankers waiting in Hormuz and how to bring food to the crews? Just curious. I have no fucking idea, and I think that it is indicative of Trump being incompetent and his administration being incompetent, that they did not plan for this. This very specific thing they did not plan for, in addition to a lot of other things they did not plan for. All right, Lindsay Reed, East Meets Westy, and Muzz King, thank you so much for helping me reach my first gift goal of the day. I just realized that I forgot to set up gift goals today, so that was an older one. So I guess we can go back to the very beginning, and we can start with some fucking roses, you know? Alrighty, let's see here. Grace says, Trump Great Recession is here to stay. I don't think it's here to stay, but it's definitely going to be a thing. East Meets Westy, Muzz King, and somebody whose name I can't pronounce. Thank you so much for helping me reach my second gift goal of the day. Alrighty, where are we at now? We're almost at an hour. All right, let's start fucking banging out these gift goals, you know? All right, Thomas says, how many times can you say war exertion thing in Iran is close to over before it's fake news? I mean, there's no evidence that it's even close to being over. Do you know what I mean? Yeah, Trump's a liar. News at 11. East Meets Westy, Muzz King, Mia, thank you so much for reach my third gift goal of the day. Let's move on to finger hearts because we're really cooking right now. My username is Nocturnal Nymph. All right, I will call you Nocturnal Nymph. Let's get into it. Alrighty. Scrolling up. Oh, I call you Phoenix if that's what you want to be called. Alrighty. Keep it. I don't see exactly what's going on over there on YouTube, but definitely keep it civil, guys. Remember to keep it civil. Okay, let's get back to some of these TikTok comments. Trey Kettle says, we have taken out so many of their leaders in military capabilities. I'm sure it's close to over. Trey Kettle, I do not believe that is accurate. I would suggest you get your news from other sources. Thank you, Mikel. I appreciate you being here. JP, I appreciate you fingering me. Chuck Isberry says, I enjoy you because I agree with everything you say. Thank you, Chuck Isberry. I appreciate that. Mayton says, thoughts on ICE? ICE is a rogue agency that is behaving illegally and barbarically. They are ignoring people's due process rights and humanitarian rights. They are kidnapping brown people that they see. They are ignoring their mandate of deporting, quote, the worst and the worst, and instead they are just rounding up every brown person they are seeing, regardless of their legal status, regardless if they're a citizen or not, regardless of if they're a veteran or Native American. And sometimes they're detaining these people for months with zero charges, zero evidence, zero fucking reason. These people are being tortured, they're being sexually assaulted, and they're being murdered by ICE. People need to go to fucking jail for this. And any Democratic politician who says that, who runs on that, is getting my vote and my campaign dollars. John Scarp says thoughts on the Somali scandal in Minnesota. You know, it's interesting that you would refer to it that way, which just you've proven that propaganda works by describing it that way, because it's not the Somali scandal in Minnesota. It is the white lady scandal in Minnesota, because the woman that was in charge of that whole thing was a white lady, and she is in jail. This has gotten hyped up. It's gotten overhyped because the right-wing media machine is trying to smear the names of both Democratic politicians in charge of Minnesota and also Somali immigrants. The exact same kind of fraud is happening in most American states. And I believe in Florida and Texas, it's actually worse. But for some reason, America was laser focused on this fraud happening in Minnesota, and then also making it seem like this was a problem that is not currently being addressed. Like, investigations are ongoing. And I believe, I could be wrong about this, but I believe somebody pointed out to me that this actually came up during the first Trump administration, and he did nothing about it. The investigation actually got legs during the Biden administration. And the reason why we're seeing accountability and repercussions for this is because of Democrats. And Republicans just fucking ignored it originally. I would love it if somebody would double check that for me, because I'm like 90% sure that I'm remembering that news story accurately. Alrighty, Paul Carr, saxophonist, says, "Are you surprised how morally bankrupt and corrupt Republicans are?" I figured out who Republican politicians were a long time ago. The fact that they keep on lowering their own bar, the fact that there does not seem to be a bottom to this barrel, is constantly shocking to me. But the party that decided to do nothing about gun violence after Newtown, is that what it was called? After that one school got shot up during the Obama administration, the party that is allowing corporations to poison our air and our water with forever chemicals and carcinogens, the party that has been cutting taxes for the billionaire class so that they can entrench themselves in power and get cushy consulting jobs after they're out of government. Yeah, no. Nothing should shock me anymore, but the fact that they keep on finding new ways to shock me is demonstrative. And no human being should be voting for Republican politicians for a generation, at the least. Misty Lane says, "It's always us young people being punished for the actions of boomers and Gen X, except Jarrett, he's the only cool Gen X." Oh, you are correct. Short Monkey says, "Proof intelligence isn't a requirement for a live feed." I'm very intelligent, Short Monkey. Would you like to ask a question, or would you like to get booted? Rhiannon says, "Do you think they're going to do anything about the people on the island?" Not while Republicans are in charge. Republicans are currently involved in covering up the Epstein files because they don't want Trump and his billionaire buddies to get in trouble with the law. So that is just one of many reasons why we should be voting for Democrats in the midterms and in every election going forward. Kim Ardat says, "Have you seen the reporting from the Colorado Times on the secret ICE holding rooms?" Yeah, ICE is torturing people, they are sexually assaulting people, and they are murdering people. And the Trump administration is not only letting this happen, but they are encouraging it. And Stephen Miller is telling them, yeah, go, do more. You have full immunity. All right. Rhiannon says, "Isn't Trump the one that called the police on Epstein, though?" No, that is inaccurate. And in fact, I believe a House Democrat just went on the floor and showed a file from the documents. So showed a document from the files that proved that was false. If you want more specifics than that, DM me and I will shoot you the thing that I read. John Scarp says, "Thoughts on Democrats supporting transitions on children?" Excellent question, John Scarp, because I know that if you look at that, issue from the outside, it can seem like psychotic. Like, you really think that children should be allowed to make that decision? But here's the thing. And I want to caveat this by saying that if there are people that are rushing children through transitions just to sort of like, make a little bit of extra Medicaid money or something, obviously that is unconscionable and should not be happening. But I'm talking about what is the policy that Democrats are advocating for, not what are people who are acting shitty doing. The policy that Democrats are advocating for is for a slow and cautious and evidence-based approach to making sure that children can lead happy and fulfilling lives. And what the data is saying is that allowing children to explore potentially that they might be trans, allowing them to start with things like puberty blockers, or not even that, allowing them to start with things like going by a different name or wearing different clothes, that has exponentially beneficial effects on children's well-beings. And children do a lot less self-harm, and children aren't unaliving themselves as much when we give them access to that information and that medical treatment. So that is what we are for. Now, somebody's going to tell you that that's code for Democrats want to chop off dicks, but that's not accurate. People are going to tell you that Democrats love it when men go into women's bathroom and assault the children in there. That is also not what we are saying. What we are saying is that there are children out there who are suffering. And one of the tools that we have to end the suffering is allowing them to explore this possible side of their identity. Alrighty. Parker says, some of y'all act like Republicans are the only people who lie. Democrats do too, y'all. Parker, did you know that they've actually done studies on this? And Republicans lie a lot more than Democratic politicians. If you want me to send you that study, I am happy to. But that's one of those things that's like not a both sides issue. It's like, yeah, you can find individual examples of Democrats lying, but like it's not even a close game. It's like Democrats lie like point, what do you call it? Democrats have like 5 lie points. Oh no, my live on TikTok got booted for misinformation, which is obviously bullshit. So we're gonna have to appeal. That's a bummer. I was doing really good. I had over 100 people over there. But guess what? That just means I can spend a little bit more time paying attention to my Substack and my Twitch and my YouTube. I gotta check. I had to keep on checking back over there. Scott Hope, I don't think that you're here anymore still, but let me get into some of these comments. I believe this can be a forever war. I agree. Scott Hope says there will soon be another group of people who will be pointed out as illegal, cheaters, or whatever. That is also accurate. Every Republican statement is a confession. Every accusation coming from a right-wing talking head or a right-wing politician is actually an accusation. All right, Misty Lane says, seeing as DSA is trying to take over the Democratic Party, is it possible for the more right-wing Democrats to take over the Republican Party the same way so that we can actually push to the left? Misty Lane, I guess that's one possible way that things can shake out. I think it's probably more likely that, I don't say more likely, but I think there's another scenario where the Republican Party just doesn't exist anymore, and that we just have we just have the two ascendant political parties being centrist Democrats and progressive Democrats. I think that would work out. I think that would work out a lot better for our politics if that was actually what was happening. Ooh, righty. Yeah. God damn. I don't usually get bothered by this shit, but my numbers were doing real good, and I was really enjoying talking to some of those people, So, yeah, this one stings a little bit, guys. Especially because I already had to stop and restart my TikTok once already today. All right, so we're going to try to get back on TikTok for a second. And we're back. We are back on TikTok. Welcome to Ask Me Anything About Politics, everybody. My name is Jarrett, and I have been live streaming for over an hour already. But because some right wing person did not like the things that I was saying, they decided to report my channel for misinformation. I appealed that decision. I won the appeal because they were full of shit, and now I am back. So go ahead and throw your questions in the chat about politics, and we will get to answering them. I know that politics can be really intimidating when you're first trying to learn about it. I know it can feel like trying to learn a new language. So this is the place where you can ask all of your questions about politics, and nobody is going to judge you or call you a name or roast you or harass you. So anybody who has a question, just go ahead and throw it in the chat, and we will get to answering them. There is no such thing as a dumb question. Italiana, yeah, 100%. Can you believe? Can you believe that somebody just reported my channel for misinformation just because they didn't like my politics? You know, it seems kind of sus in my opinion. Cam says, you think gun hubs where people can hand in guns for medical discounts would stop the circulation? I think that's a pretty good policy. Yeah, any trading guns for thing I think works out great. CS asks, what happens? What happened? Well, some right-wing person or bot or troll or whatever reported my channel for misinformation. And sometimes that results in an immediate cessation of my live stream. This is one of the times when that happened. I appealed the decision, and then the decision was undone. So it really is just a tactic that the right uses to try to silence dissenting voices. It is another proof point, the fact that the right wing doesn't really give a shit about free speech. They just want their speech to be free so they can spread a bunch of misinformation and propaganda. D says misinformation? No, you're Mr. Information. Pretty funny, my guy. Pretty funny. Camcan says, God, I wish I was American and rich. There's so many things I want to do for you people over there. Yeah, I feel the same way, Cam. If I could just be given all of Elon Musk's resources, I could solve so many fucking problems. I could do it in a year. I could solve world hunger. I could solve income inequality. I could fix American politics. Just like give me Elon Musk's resources and I will fix everything, guys. Nopper says, what do you think about Donald Trump? Donald Trump is a corrupt and incompetent fascist. There are not enough negative words in the dictionary for me to describe Donald Trump. He should be impeached 1,000 times. He should be in jail 100%. Zany says, favorite president of all time? Oh, I don't really have one. I just have a couple that I like. I thought Biden was good. I thought Obama was good. JFK, FDR, you know, shit like that. Fukin Madera says, income equality. Yeah, I'm for income equality. Kirsten says he loves Taft. No, I do not love Taft, you ding dong. Mikael said, should America have more than 2 political parties? Yes, but without ranked choice voting, other parties will just be spoiler candidates. Desi Light says, you thought Biden was good? Question mark. Yeah, you know, I'll put a caveat on that, Desi, because there is a question about how much of what the Biden administration did was he responsible for. It seems from reporting that his team did a lot of work to hide his mental decline. But what else was I about to say about that? But the things that happened during his administration were unequivocally good. Now, some of the foreign policy stuff was atrocious, like obviously sending money weapons to Israel. Like, there's no excuse for that. There's no amount of supporting the union that makes up for that. But if we're grading on a curve of presidents, we're talking about the most progressive administration since FDR. And again, credit to the people that actually did that work, like Lena Khan, if Biden wasn't one responsible for it. But first president to walk a picket line, an NLRB that was siding with the unions for the first time ever, for the first time in generations. You know, successfully negotiating paid sick days for the rail workers union, the PACT Act, which was filling gaps in veterans' healthcare, the CHIPS and Science Act, which was bringing high-tech manufacturing back to America, lowering Medicare costs, lowering medical costs for Americans and particularly seniors, capping the cost of insulin, capping the cost of asthma inhalers, the largest investment in renewable energy in our nation's history, small towns getting revitalized with safe, well-paying green energy jobs. Like, are you fucking kidding me? You know? Bone Crusher says, how do you feel about ICE's violence towards immigrants? I'm against it, but it's also not just about immigrants. It's just whatever brown people they feel like rounding up. Like, it's fucking psychotic. It is unconscionable what ICE is doing. Mike Goodwin says, Biden is very underrated. He passed a ton of good job creating legislation and reduced the deficit. Yeah. And because of the Trump administration, we had inflation up to 90%, up to 9%. The Biden administration brought that down to 2.4%. That is an underappreciated thing that the Biden administration was able to accomplish. John Abbott says, a leader that picks good people to delegate responsibilities to is still a good leader. And I agree with that. Stephen Peterson says, what are your thoughts on the food pyramid flip by RFK prioritizing proteins first? RFK does not base his decisions on science, so it's all fucking sus as hell. Mikhail says, did your stream crash before? My stream did not crash before. Right-wing trolls reported my stream for misinformation. Sometimes that results in an immediate cessation of my live stream, but when that happens, I'm able to appeal the decision. I appealed the decision. I won the appeal because, as with all of the ways that my channel gets reported, it is all completely specious. Like, there's no basis for it whatsoever. I am regularly being reported for harassment and bullying and misinformation, and none of it is accurate. Cam says, what's your opinion on banning pistols? I think 70% of all crimes are by these, I think. I don't know if it would work in America because we have a real love affair with our gun culture here. I think we can start by just legislating pistol ownership, and we can see, we can see how that goes. Maybe if America loves having less gun violence, we can start, pushing the needle a little bit more. Dan Clemson says, are you okay with gas prices at almost $4 a gallon? No, I am not, Dan Clemson. And I think it's very weird. I think it's very weird that the president that said that he was going to bring down gas prices is creating gasoline at over $100 a barrel, and many experts are saying that it could go even higher than that. CS says, did you notice Republicans want to make it harder to vote than to own a gun? That is 100% right. And if you ask them, what does it take to get drafted? Do I need my passport? Do I need my birth certificate? Do I even need an ID? They're like, no, we have your social security number, so we know where you are and who you are, and so we can draft you. But to vote, they can't just use that, I guess. McBaller Deluxe says, why do leftists insist that socialism works when all available evidence suggests it doesn't? That is inaccurate, McBaller Deluxe. First of all, their leftists don't say that socialism works. Leftists say that socialist policies work. So, for example, universal health care is a socialist policy. And there is no evidence to suggest that socialism at all does not work. There's never been a socialist country. There have been very successful socialist programs, so all evidence suggests that socialism does work. I'm happy to go into more detail on that, McBaller Deluxe, if you like. Cam says, what's your opinion on Trump swearing that he's not an Oompa Loompa? Well, he lies about everything. All right. This guy is a block because that is just, what do you call it? Jarrod says, speaking of universal health care, we spent that money in the last 12 days. That is accurate. The stupid fucking war for no fucking reason that is costing lives is also costing us $1 billion a day, which could just be universal health care instead. Instead of just indiscriminately murdering brown people in the Middle East, we could just all have universal health care. Sounds pretty good to me, don't you think? Stephen Peterson says, someone mentioned making passports free for all citizens to lower fraud with jobs, etc. Is it true? I'll believe it when I see it. But yeah, if you really want to make passports a thing for people to vote, then make passports free and easy to get. Then maybe we can talk. Mikael says, do you believe in any religion? Not any, like, prescribed religion. Propaganda. Michael B says, propaganda of misinformation. That's not a phrase, Michael B. QC says, passports are for poor people. What a weird thing to say. And Carmine, I don't know which DM you are referring to. I don't remember the last time that I saw a message from you. J-Rod says, so weird our tax money would be used for the people. What a strange idea. I know, J-Rod, right? So Sume says, paying for a useless war without healthcare. Totally agree. Aceback says, how'd you feel about Charlie Kirk and Ben Shapiro? That one really... that one really got me, Aceback. Fucking 2 thumbs up. I'm not a regular consumer of yaoi, but yeah, so I'm not going to endorse that content. Rhiannon says, just DM'd you about the earlier conversation. Excellent. Cannot wait to check that out. Uncle John says, did you vote for Trump? No, never. I've had my fucking finger on Trump being a fucking con artist since day fucking one, my guy. All right, Space Plum says, I took my dog out for a walk this morning and passed by a gas station. It was $3.89 a gallon, and by the time I rounded the block, it was $4.07. That can't be real. That was literally updating in real time. Space Plum, really? Wow. Tot Sauce says, are you optimistic about the Texas Senate race? Yes, but we need to do the work because the Republican Party is very prolific in their voter suppression and cheating. So we have to make sure that we do enough work to counter that. Wait. Alrighty. So listen, everybody, I'm going to start wrapping things up. So get in your final questions. If you want to support the show financially, you can, but you don't have to. I know that we are all struggling in the Trump cost of living crisis. But if you have the dollars and you have the desire to use them to help support this channel, then the mechanisms are there. You can be you can send gifts on TikTok. You can send bits on Twitch. You can become a super fan on TikTok. You can become a subscriber on Twitch. And if you have Amazon Prime, you can subscribe to my Twitch channel for free. Costs you $0 and helps me out a ton. You can also join my Patreon for as little as $1 a month. Matt Moody says, there's something you can tell me that the Democrats are doing right now to help us. Yeah, the Democrats don't have a lot of power right now, Matt Moody, so the things that they can do are limited. They are withholding DHS funding so to rein in ICE's behavior. Like, that's a good thing. They are at the forefront of trying to, introduce bills to tax the rich, to stop insider trading in Congress. And the fact that, to reveal the Epstein files, the only thing that is stopping all of that legislation from passing and funding DHS and paying our fucking TSA agents is the Republican Party. So their efforts are partially in messaging and letting people know what the option would be if they voted for Democrats instead, what kind of government they could have. And some of it is obstructing the worst impulses of the Trump administration and ICE and CPB. There are a lot of things that they are doing despite having no political power right now and significantly less money available to them than Republican politicians. Oh, thank you, East Meets Westy. I really appreciate that. Let's see here. Plo Cool says, I feel like socialism can only really work in a society with zero corruption. Am I just dumb? I don't think you're dumb. But I would say that you don't need to go 0 to 1,000 with socialism. You can start with just having universal basic income and universal health care and free public college and shit like that. And then, we'll see how that goes. Alrighty. Special thanks to my regular financial contributors, Muzz King, Pliff, Average Joe, It's the Rocketeer, the Two Seans, D, Robert, Shannon, Carmine, Patrick, and everybody who sends gifts. on the live stream. I really appreciate you guys. I really appreciate all the support that you guys give me and my show, if it's whether it's the free kind or the paid kinds. It is your support that allows me to keep doing this work, and I do think that this work is helping. And that's the only reason why I do it. I don't do it for money. I don't do it for clout. I do it because I feel like somebody needs to do this exact job that I'm doing. Alrighty, if there are any questions that I'm not able to get to on this live stream, DMs are open. I want you guys to email me. I want you guys to reach out. I want to be a resource for you to be more informed and more involved in politics. And so however I can do that, use me and abuse me. Use me until you use me up. DMs are open. You can email me through my website. You can hit me up on my Discord channel. The Discord is also great because there's recommendations there for books and podcasts, and also recommendations for nonprofits that desperately need help from people just like you. I guarantee you that there is some work that you can be doing to help what is going on right now. You can be doing something regardless of how many hours you have available in the day, regardless of where you live. There is work that you can be doing to help. And we only get out of this if we do the work. Dynamite says, why would anyone support Democrats? There's a lot of reasons to support Democrats, Dynamite. What's the issue that is the most important to you, Dynamite? And I can tell you why you should support Democrats over Republicans. Carmine says, we all know Soros pays you in gummies. He would be broke if that is how he paid me. Alrighty, let's see here. Jack says, what do you think about AIPAC? AIPAC is a far right-wing organization funded by American billionaires to push an extreme right-wing Israel-focused agenda. They can go to fucking hell. Yeah, AIPAC can go to fucking hell. And also, every extremely well-funded right-wing lobby organization can go to hell. Heritage can go to hell. Federalist Society can go to hell. And AIPAC can go to hell. All right, Dynamite, still waiting for your answer to my question, Dynamite. Joe Schmo says, why would California push to get rid of gas-powered vehicles before the electrical grid is ready? My guess, Joe Schmo, is that every electric car that America puts on, that we put on the road helps. And especially a car-heavy city like Los Angeles or a car-heavy state like California, every single electric car that is put on the road helps. Like, we're already seeing the benefits in air quality. And the transition to getting everybody on electric vehicles is going to take a while. And so maybe we can do both things at the same time. Maybe we can encourage people to switch at the same time as we are slowly switching over the grid. All right, everybody. I think it's weird that... yeah, it's really weird that Dynamite wasn't able to tell me an issue that they cared about. So, pretty weird, right? Pretty weird. Joe Schmo says, to be pretty honest, that sounds like quitting your job before you have one lined up. Seems poorly planned. Well, I disagree, Joe Schmo. All right, everybody, have a great weekend. I am tired. Do the work. Hold on a second. Bogos Binted says, we'll see how that goes. Should look at the consequences before implementing such radical policies. Yeah, no, the studies have been done, Bogos Binted. When I say we'll see how it goes, that's not the government saying we'll see how it goes. That's me saying we'll see how it goes. But yeah, this stuff has been researched to fucking death. There have been dozens of pilot programs for universal basic income specifically. So yeah, you can miss me with that nonsense, Bogos Binted. Normally, I'm not this short with people that disagree with me, Bogos, but you're catching me at the end of an almost 90-minute long stream. So I'm gonna dip out of here, everybody. See you guys. Have a great weekend. Do the work. Be good to yourselves. Be good to others. And I will see you guys on Monday. Same bat time, same bat channel. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.